Reverend Glenn Stockings. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate having an audience once in a while.
Okay.
Well, we really do continue to live in interesting times. Every day I get up and I check in with the news, and sometimes I'm driven to the depths of despair by the numbers being posted showing the numbers of cases of coronavirus and the people that have passed. And then at the same time, I'm lifted to the heights of ecstasy by the random acts of kindness and creativity that are being displayed, fortunately, by so many of the morning shows who choose, thank you very much, to not dwell on the bad news and do make an attempt to fill our hearts with a little bit of joy every morning. And through all this, we are rethinking everything. We're rethinking how we work. We're rethinking how we dress. Remember when if you saw somebody walk into a bank with a mask on their face, you had an issue with that? And now we expect them to. And we're rethinking how we go to church or produce TV shows and everything else that we're doing. And in fact, thanks to the resurgence of people wearing bandanas to cover their faces, I see that Downy fabric softener is now being labeled as a breath freshener. So, and unfortunately, though, now, and thanks to another senseless act of violence, we're finally getting some traction on a major rethink of how we treat each other. Just when we thought coronavirus was the only thing we had to worry about, we were reminded that we've got a much deeper issue out there to deal with. And we are conditioned from birth to think in terms of winning or losing. Everything from school sports to spelling bees teaches us that someone else must lose for us to win. Human history is an endless listing of one population exploiting another. Now, I want to, reiterate, I'm not against school sports. They're wonderful. They do teach us good things. They teach us sportsmanship and being able to take a loss once in a while. That's good. But in our human history of this greed that we have come to tout as a good thing sometimes, we've done some pretty awful stuff. And if we trim our horizon down to just a few hundred years, the idea that it is okay to move into a less developed area and exploit the riches found there by suppressing the local population can be credited with much of our current strife. Colonialism is sort of the most recent root of just not treating other people well, expecting that they're not the same as we are. Our collective choice, to express others to fuel our greed requires us to manufacture a false picture of the other whom we choose to suppress. Excuse me a second, I'm going to cough. We must hate our enemies to justify destroying them. We cannot see their humanity and wish hurt upon them. Most destructively, however, we must deny our spirituality, because our spiritual self is not capable of doing the things we choose to justify doing. When we choose to hurt others, when we choose to suppress the value of others, we're cutting ourselves off at the knees with our own spirituality. We're simply saying we're not spiritual beings. We choose to live in a human world with human values. And we know as students of spirituality that just doesn't work. Yes, we have freedom of choice, but we can only be happiest when we choose to follow our spiritual nature. My favorite tenet of the Science of Mind teaching is that every breath is an opportunity to change. Regardless of the common consciousness, regardless of every experience before today, regardless of what everyone has always accepted. Today, in this moment, everything can change. We are not shackled to our past. The first step to recovery is recognizing there is a problem. I think that is finally happening in our world. I think we have finally evolved to a point where not just one city, not just one state or one country, but the entire world is standing up and saying, something isn't right here. Something is out of alignment with who we are as spiritual beings. It is time to make a change. The next step in recovery is a willingness to change. People are stepping out again all over the world, expressing it is time. Now, unfortunately, I don't know how many of you saw it this morning, there was another senseless act of violence. And people moved quickly. And it's a developing story, so I can't say what's going to happen, but a policeman was immediately fired, and the police chief resigned in Atlanta this morning because of an incident that happened this weekend. So we're seeing not a cover-up, but an exposure of the problem and a willingness to act and do the right thing to make a change. And then as we step into this recovery mode, the next step is to find new ways of thinking. To finally recognize that that same old thing that we've been doing over and over and over again is having the same results over and over and over again, and they're not the results we want. So finally opening our hearts and our minds to say, let's listen to some new ideas. Let's give some credence to different ways of doing things. Now, they're not all going to be great ideas. Not everything is going to be acceptable to everyone. But we have an opportunity here to listen and to listen to our hearts and to feel the spiritual message inside telling us this has merit. This deserves development. Now, Brené Brown, in her newest book, Daring Greatly, has some thoughts that I think will help us change our thinking. She talks about 10 guideposts for wholehearted people to consider. Look at what you want to cultivate and look at what you need to let go of. And I'll just list them here quickly. And one is starting with cultivating authenticity. If you want to be authentic to the world, let go of what other people think. What other people think of me is none of my business. If I want to be authentic, be authentic. Don't worry about what the public or anyone else is going to say about it. That's who I am. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. You want to cultivate some self-compassion? Let go of perfectionism. None of us is going to be perfect all of the time. Present company accepted, of course. But for the most part, we make mistakes. Let go of aiming for perfectionism all the time. What's the old saying? Don't let perfect get in the way of good enough. Sometimes you just have to be good enough. Want to cultivate a resilient spirit? Let go of numbing and powerlessness. You want to be resilient? Don't think, oh my God, this is horrible. Let me have a drink. Let me have a hit of the latest fun drug. Let me just sit in front of the TV all day and watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer reruns. Be resilient. Take the hit. Get up and take another one. Cultivate gratitude and joy by letting go of the idea of scarcity and fear of the dark. If you're focused on scarcity and you're afraid of the dark, it's hard to be gracious and to have joy. You've got to let those things go. Cultivating intuition and trusting faith. We need to let go for the need for certainty. We can't say we have faith and then dictate how that faith has to look all the time. We've got to open ourselves up to the fact that maybe the best idea is going to come out of left field someplace, and we need to look at that and see if there might be some merit to it. We don't have to be certain that we are right all the time. We have to be certain that the right answer is going to be revealed. Want to cultivate creativity? Let go of comparison. Again, what other people think is none of my business. I want to create something, I create it for the pure joy of my expressing myself. If other people enjoy it, fantastic. But they don't have to for me to create. Want to cultivate an air of calm and stillness? Let go of anxiety as a lifestyle. We don't have to be anxious all the time. Just let go of having to be in control of everything. And let the stillness and the calmness of our spiritual nature come and be our true experience. Want to have meaningful work in your life? Let go of self-doubt and supposed to attitude. Stop doing what you're supposed to do in somebody else's eyes. Stop doubting ourselves and simply get to the business of doing what we do. Again, be the best you can be. Want to cultivate laughter, song, and dance? Let go of being cool and always in control. Dance like nobody's watching. You'll have a much better time. Renee goes on to write about parenting, such an important issue in right and wrong, because that's where it starts for all of us. When it comes to parenting, she writes, the practice of framing mothers and fathers as good or bad is both rampant and corrosive. It turns parenting into a shame minefield. The real questions for parents, she writes, should be, are you engaged? Are you paying attention? If so, plan to make a lot of mistakes and bad decisions. Imperfect parenting moments, she writes again, turn into gifts as our children watch us try to figure out what went wrong and how we can do it better next time. How many times have you thought, or how many times have you heard others say, I do not want to turn into my mother or father. Please, God, let me die before that happens. Don't let me be like them. Well, we do turn into them to some degree. And I'm happy to say that I think I got a pretty good break in life. My parents were pretty good. They weren't especially completed in education. They weren't prosperous financially, but they were good people. And I couldn't really ask for more. Thank you for that, Mom and Dad. The mandate is not to be perfect and raise happy children, Brene writes. Perfection doesn't exist, and I've found that what makes children happy doesn't always prepare them to be courageous, engaged adults. Let our kids see us think through our problems. I know most of us have experienced with our kids that, up to about 8 or 9 years old, we're pretty much perfect in their eyes, and that's a really nice feeling. And then something happens. Their minds expand. They become exposed to more ideas. And suddenly they realize maybe Mom and Dad aren't perfect all the time. But that's okay, because they're going to make mistakes too, and they darn well better figure out how to work their way through those mistakes. And if they can do that by watching us, all the better. Recognizing a good idea with an attitude of how to make this happen rather than this can never work is an idea whose time has come. The nature of spirit is to make things work. Our part is to believe it does. I was watching my late night shows the other day, and Tiffany Haddish was on and had some good ideas that I think really deserve some closer examination. She said that in her neighborhood there was an abandoned bank building, and she was developing this idea to create a fresh food store there because it was an underserved neighborhood. The kind of neighborhood where, if you're hungry, you go down to the local 7-Eleven and get a hot dog off of the grill. Hopefully you can find one that hasn't been there for, 3 or 4 days. Or you buy something in a package and you eat some chips or some other packaged meal. And we know that while these can be satisfying in the short term, they're not really good for us in the long term. So she has this idea of, let's have these fresh food markets in these underserved neighborhoods. Let's have cooking classes in these buildings right there. Let's make available at reasonable cost the utensils that you need to actually do the cooking. And because these are not profitable ventures, maybe the municipalities or the states could redirect some of their police funding to help these things survive. The thinking there being that if people are healthier, if people have a community center to gather around and share ideas and get to know each other, then maybe the hardcore militaristic policing that we finance today might not be as necessary, so we can spread those funds around. Other ideas use the same thing. You have these abandoned storefronts in a lot of these little towns that are underserved. Have little medical centers there where people can stop in and talk to somebody or get the minor things taken care of, or take the stigma off of mental health so that people can get a little help early on and not have to go into the criminal justice system just because their life isn't working so well for them right now. We can rethink the wisdom of privatizing prisons, for example. These should not be run for profit. These are not hotels where a certain number of beds must be filled to be viable. These are prisons. Our measure of success is seeing them empty for lack of need. Let's figure out a way to make that work. Let's train our police to adjust to situations and de-escalate without the penalty of disapproving peer pressure. One of the reasons we see groups of officers abusing their power is because they know that if they're the one to step up and say, hey guys, we shouldn't be doing this, that officer's not going to get help the next time he needs it. His peers will shun him and treat him like an outsider, him or her. So they pay a heavy, heavy, heavy penalty for thinking outside the box. We need to encourage them to do the right thing without being penalized by their peers. In the days of 1,000-mile cattle drives, the cowboys were not paid to ride along with the herd. They were paid to catch the strays and help them keep up with the herd. Our schools need the resources to catch the strays and encourage and ensure everyone gets a basic foothold on life skills. We need to acknowledge that a failing child is not the fault of the child. It is an indication of a failing system. We are not robots, and one size does not fit all. I am happy to live in these times. Our thinking has evolved more in my lifetime than in the preceding 4 centuries. There has been more social evolution in the last 70 years than in the 4 centuries preceding that. We have moved forward with recognizing that women are human beings. We have moved forward with recognizing that our physical sex at birth does not define who we are as a human being. We have moved forward with recognizing that the color of our skin is not what defines who we are mentally and socially, but that there are crossovers possible and that we are really all one. Ideas that I accepted as a child and into my adulthood now make me squirm with discomfort. And I still like Gone with the Wind, but through the lens of evolution, there are serious inaccuracies that demand highlighting. So I'm open to looking at that myself and saying, okay, yeah, that hurts. That's not bad. That's not the story I want to be telling necessarily. And I welcome the discomfort because it opens a door for my spiritual nature to pour through. It allows me to recognize that there is a problem, and it's an invitation to change. Our spiritual selves flourish when we reach out to help others. There's a reason it feels good to celebrate our essential service workers. Gratitude is one of the steps in every affirmative prayer. There's a reason we love seeing videos of people doing creative things while in quarantine. Spirit is creative, and we are individualized expressions of spirit. Our spiritual selves flourish when we celebrate the victories of others because our spiritual self knows that we are of one mind, one infinite power. Victory for one is victory for all. If making you wrong is the only way I can be right, then let me be wrong because I have accepted a choice that is out of alignment with Spirit. Spirit does not see you and me, only itself as you and me. It can no more love one more than the other than I can love my left eye more than my right. I don't want to be right if that makes you wrong. We can find a solution that works for everyone. And that's what the Science of Mind is all about. Creating a world that works for everyone and teaching everyone how it works. Thank you. I appreciate it.